Being the county sheriff wasn't exactly a thrill-a-minute job, but it was honest work. Most days were filled with petty disputes, the occasional deer caught in a fence, and Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning roses being nibbled on by rabbits. It was predictable, safe, and usually quiet. That's why the subtle disturbances at my own house were starting to get under my skin. I'd come home from a long shift, craving a cold beer and the blessed silence of my own space, only to find things off. A stray sequin glittering on the living room rug, a damp towel carelessly discarded near the bookshelf, the faint, lingering scent of cheap vanilla perfume, and, most disturbingly, the pool water level noticeably lower than it had been that morning before I left for work. At first, I chalked it up to forgetfulness, maybe even a touch of sleep deprivation messing with my memory. I'd find a dropped earring and assume it was from my last visit from my sister. But the occurrences were becoming more frequent, more blatant. One day, a pair of ridiculously high heels were abandoned in the hallway, caked in mud. Another day, I found an empty pizza box stashed behind the azalea bushes in the backyard. It was unnerving, like living in a house that was slowly being invaded by a mischievous and clearly inconsiderate poltergeist. I checked all the doors and windows every night, making sure the alarm was armed. Hell, I even called up Deputy Miller and asked him just to drive by the house and see if he notices anything out of the ordinary. He just laughed and told me I was getting paranoid. "Sheriff, you're seeing too many episodes of unsolved mysteries," he'd chuckled. But I wasn't imagining things. There was a pattern emerging, a creeping sense of violation. It felt personal, like someone was deliberately disrespecting my space, my sanctuary. What really pissed me off was the pool. I took pride in maintaining the pool, the proper chemical mixture, the clean filter. To see the water level dropping week after week, the water looking dirtier and dirtier, was a personal offense. I considered setting up security cameras, but it felt like overkill. Besides, I didn't want to turn my home into Fort Knox just because of a few unexplained incidents. I just wanted to know what was happening, and who was responsible for this weird, unsettling intrusion into my life. I planned on coming home early the next day, telling the guys I wasn't feeling well, maybe catch whoever it was in the act. I had a feeling it was someone I knew, someone who thought they could get away with messing with the sheriff. And if that was the case, they were in for a rude awakening. The next day, I faked a migraine and left the office around noon, a throbbing pulse of anticipation replacing my actual headache. I drove home carefully, making sure not to attract attention, and parked a block away. As I approached the house, I could hear it. Music, loud and thumping, the kind that vibrates through your chest. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a stray sequin or a forgotten pizza box. This was a full-blown party. I quickened my pace, a sense of righteous anger building inside me. I reached the front door, which was unlocked, and pushed it open. The scene that greeted me was surreal. My living room had been transformed into a makeshift dance floor. A disco ball hung precariously from the ceiling fan, casting dizzying patterns across the walls. A group of teenagers, barely old enough to drive, were gyrating to the music, red Solo cups clutched in their hands. The air was thick with the smell of cheap beer and something vaguely floral, probably that same damn vanilla perfume. The pool area was even worse. Kids were splashing around, fully clothed, in the water. Empty beer cans and plastic cups floated on the surface. My carefully arranged patio furniture had been rearranged into a haphazard seating area. It looked like a tornado had ripped through my backyard. Standing near the makeshift DJ setup, a smug look on her face, was Jenny, Karen's daughter. Jenny, with her perpetually bored expression and her daddy's credit card, had always been a pain in my ass. But this was a whole new level of entitlement. She was practically radiating an aura of, I can do whatever I want, and nobody can stop me. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in, letting the shock and anger simmer down into a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't just a homeowner anymore. I was the sheriff, and someone was about to learn a very important lesson about respect for the law and respect for other people's property. I strode into the living room, my presence immediately cutting through the noise and revelry. All eyes turned to me, the music sputtering to a halt as Jenny noticed me. Her face, previously alight with smug satisfaction, paled slightly. "What the hell is going on here?" I boomed, my voice echoing through the suddenly silent room. Jenny, ever the defiant brat, recovered quickly. She tossed her blonde hair, plastered on a fake smile, and sauntered towards me. "Oh, hi, Sheriff Kelly," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Just having a little get-together. Didn't know you were coming home early. A little get-together that involves trashing my house and turning my backyard into a frat party?" I retorted, my voice rising slightly. "You think this is acceptable?" "Relax, Sheriff," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "It's just a party. We're not hurting anyone. You're trespassing, for starters. You're vandalizing my property. You're serving alcohol to minors. I'd say you're hurting plenty of people, starting with me." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "It's not like you're using the pool, and who cares about a few beer cans? Daddy can buy you a new one." Her blatant disregard for my feelings, for the law, for basic human decency, ignited a fury within me. This wasn't just about a party anymore. This was about entitlement, about privilege, about the belief that some people are above the rules. "This isn't about the pool, Jenny," I growled, stepping closer to her. "This is about respect. This is about understanding that your actions have consequences, and right now, the consequences are about to get very real." "Are you threatening me, Sheriff?" she challenged, her eyes narrowing. "You can't do that. My mom knows the mayor. She'll have your badge for this." Her words were like a slap in the face. She actually thought she could get away with this just because her mother was friends with the mayor. The arrogance was staggering. "Jenny," I said, my voice dangerously low, "I'm giving you one chance. Shut this party down. Get everyone out of my house. And maybe, just maybe, I'll consider letting you off with a warning." She burst out laughing. "You're hilarious, Sheriff. You think I'm scared of you? You think you can tell me what to do? This is my party, and nobody's leaving." That was it. I'd given her a chance to back down, to show a shred of remorse. But she'd chosen to double down on her arrogance, to flaunt her privilege in my face. The gloves were off. "All right, Jenny," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "You've made your choice." I reached into my pocket, pulled out my badge, and held it up for everyone to see. The room fell silent, the teenage faces suddenly etched with fear and uncertainty. The sight of my badge seemed to suck all the air out of the room. The music stopped abruptly, the disco ball swaying gently in the sudden silence. The teenagers, who moments before had been carefree and boisterous, suddenly looked like frightened rabbits caught in the headlights. Jenny's face, which had been flushed with defiance, turned ashen. The smugness evaporated, replaced by a flicker of genuine fear. "I am Sheriff Carson Kelly," I announced, my voice booming through the room. "And this party is officially over. Everyone who isn't a resident of this house needs to leave. Now." Shut the theater. Reaction was immediate. A scramble of bodies, a flurry of apologies, a desperate rush for the exits. The teenagers stumbled over each other, grabbing their belongings, knocking over furniture in their haste to escape. The living room, which had moments before been a scene of chaotic revelry, was now a scene of panicked exodus. They streamed out of the house, tripping over the muddy heels in the hallway, squeezing through the front door, scattering across the lawn like startled birds. The silence that descended was almost deafening, broken only by the sound of car engines sputtering to life and tires squealing as they sped away. Within minutes, the house was empty, save for Jenny and me. The remnants of the party, the empty beer cans, the discarded cups, the muddy footprints, served as a stark reminder of the chaos that had just unfolded. Jenny stood there, frozen, her face a mask of disbelief and fear. The realization of what she had done, of the consequences she was about to face, seemed to finally be dawning on her. You can't do this," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "You're going to ruin my life. You ruined your own life." "Jenny," I said, my voice cold and unforgiving, "you made a choice, and now you have to face the consequences." I reached for my handcuffs, the metal clicking ominously in the silence. Jenny flinched, her eyes widening in terror. "No, please," she begged, her voice cracking. "Don't arrest me. My mom will kill me." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to throw a party in my house," I said, my voice devoid of sympathy. I took her arm, the cool metal of the handcuffs snapping shut around her wrist. She didn't resist, her body limp and defeated. The fight had gone out of her. The walk to the patrol car was silent, the only sound the click of our shoes on the pavement. The neighbors, who had undoubtedly heard the commotion, peeked out from behind their curtains, their faces etched with curiosity and amusement. I placed Jenny in the back of the car, her face buried in her hands. As I drove her to the station, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Justice had been served, and maybe, just maybe, this experience would teach Jenny a valuable lesson about respect, responsibility, and the fact that even the most entitled people aren't above the law. The booking process was a blur of paperwork, fingerprints, and mugshots. Jenny remained silent and compliant, her earlier defiance replaced by a sullen resignation. I could tell she was terrified, not just of the legal consequences, but of the wrath of her mother. As I completed the paperwork, the phone rang. It was Karen. Her voice was shrill and demanding, laced with a barely concealed rage. "Carson Kelly, what in God's name is going on?" she shrieked. "I just got a call from the mayor. He tells me you arrested my daughter." "That's right, Karen," I said, my voice calm and professional. "Jenny is currently in custody, facing charges of trespassing, vandalism, and contributing to the delinquency of minors." "This is outrageous," she screamed. "You can't do this. My daughter is a good girl. She wouldn't do anything like that." "I have eyewitnesses, Karen," I said patiently, "and the state of my house speaks for itself. Jenny threw a party at my house without my permission, served alcohol to minors, and caused significant damage to my property." "This is all a misunderstanding," she insisted. "Jenny probably just got caught up in something. You need to release her immediately." "I can't do that, Karen," I said firmly. "Jenny will be arraigned tomorrow morning. She'll have the opportunity to explain her side of the story to the judge." "I'm going to sue you, Carson Kelly," she threatened. "I'm going to sue the county. I'm going to make sure you lose your job." "You haven't heard the last of this," I sighed. This was exactly what I had expected. Karen, ever the entitled and unreasonable Karen, was threatening to use her connections and her money to try to get her daughter out of trouble. You're welcome. To do whatever you think is necessary, Karen, I said wearily. But the fact remains that Jenny broke the law, and she's going to have to answer for it. I hung up the phone, cutting off her tirade. I knew this wasn't over. Karen would be back, armed with lawyers and accusations, ready to fight tooth and nail to protect her daughter. But I was prepared. I had the evidence, the witnesses, and the law on my side, and I wasn't going to back down no matter how much pressure Karen tried to exert. I checked on Jenny, who was sitting in a holding cell, staring blankly at the wall. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but it was quickly overshadowed by the memory of the disrespect and entitlement she had displayed. She had made a choice, and now she was paying the price. I knew that this was just the beginning of a long and messy legal battle, but I was ready for it. I was the sheriff, and I had a duty to uphold the law, no matter who broke it. And I wasn't going to let anyone, not even Karen and her connections, get away with thinking they were above the law. The next morning, the courthouse was buzzing with activity. The news of Jenny's arrest had spread like wildfire, turning the normally quiet town into a spectacle. The courtroom was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and, of course, Karen, who sat in the front row, her face a mask of fury and determination. Jenny was brought in, looking pale and contrite. She pleaded not guilty to all charges, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. The judge, a no-nonsense woman who had little patience for spoiled brats, set a trial date and released Jenny on bail, with strict instructions to stay away from my property. The trial was a media circus. Karen pulled out all the stops, hiring a high-powered lawyer who tried to paint Jenny as a victim of circumstance, a naive teenager who had simply made a mistake. But the prosecution, armed with my testimony, the eyewitness accounts, and the photos of the damage to my house, presented a compelling case. In the end, the jury didn't buy Karen's sob story. They found Jenny guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to community service, a hefty fine, and probation. It wasn't a harsh sentence, but it was enough to send a message that her actions had consequences. Karen, of course, was livid. She vowed to appeal the verdict, to fight this injustice to the very end. But I knew deep down that she was fighting a losing battle. The evidence was too strong, the public sentiment too negative. Jenny had messed up, and she was going to have to pay the price. In the weeks that followed, things slowly returned to normal. The media frenzy died down. The town went back to its quiet routine, and I finally had my house back. The pool was cleaned, the furniture was rearranged, and the lingering scent of vanilla perfume was finally gone. One afternoon, a few months after the trial, I was working in my yard when I saw Jenny walking towards me. She looked different, subdued, almost humble. "Sheriff Kelly," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to apologize." I looked at her, surprised. "Apologize?" "Yes," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "For everything. For the party. For the damage. For the disrespect. I was stupid and entitled. I thought I could get away with anything. But I was wrong." I listened patiently as she poured out her heart, expressing her remorse and her regret. I could tell that she had learned a valuable lesson, that she had finally understood the consequences of her actions. "I accept your apology, Jenny," I said, offering her a small smile. "Everyone makes mistakes. The important thing is to learn from them." She smiled back, a genuine smile this time, not the fake, practiced smile she had always worn before. "Thank you," Sheriff Kelly," she said. "Thank you for teaching me a lesson I'll never forget." As she walked away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this whole ordeal had been a turning point for Jenny. A chance for her to grow and mature into a better person. And maybe, just maybe, it had also taught Karen a valuable lesson about the importance of accountability and the fact that even the most privileged people aren't above the law. And as the county sheriff, it was my job to remind them of that.